People don't rise when they're criticized, they rise when they're encouraged. One word of recognition can echo louder than 1,000 words of criticism. We don't grow when we're afraid, we grow when we feel believed in. If you've ever been in a room where someone constantly points out mistakes, you know how it feels. The air feels heavy, you second-guess your decisions, and instead of focusing on growth, you focus on survival. Now contrast that with being in a room where someone notices the effort you're putting in, highlights the small wins, and encourages you even when the results are not perfect. The energy is different, isn't it? That's because as human beings, we are wired to respond more deeply to encouragement than to criticism. It's not just psychology, it's biology, it's culture, and it's the foundation of how we thrive as individuals and communities. From the earliest stages of life, we crave recognition. A child who is learning to walk does not keep trying because someone scolds them for falling. They keep trying because every stumble is met with applause, smiles, and open arms. That simple act of clapping for a child's effort reinforces their behavior. It tells them, you're on the right track, keep going. They don't understand the mechanics of walking, but they understand the warmth of encouragement. That pattern doesn't vanish as we grow older. It just shifts in form. Whether we are employees, leaders, students, or parents, the fuel that drives us is still the same: positive reinforcement. The challenge is that many of us grew up in environments where criticism was seen as the ultimate motivator. We were told that being tough, pointing out flaws, and demanding perfection would push people to do better. And yes, sometimes fear of failure does drive action, but it rarely creates passion. Fear may produce compliance, but encouragement produces commitment. When we're criticized constantly, we learn to avoid risk. We play it safe. We do the minimum required to avoid punishment. But when we're encouraged, when our effort is seen and valued, we begin to take ownership. We strive for excellence, not because we have to, but because we want to. Think about a workplace. Imagine two managers. One spends their time highlighting errors, sending emails that point out what's wrong, and reminding the team of what they missed. The other recognizes effort, acknowledges improvements, and encourages growth while still guiding people through their mistakes. Which team do you think will innovate more, stay longer, and work harder? The answer is obvious. The first team may perform under pressure, but they'll burn out quickly. The second team feels valued, trusted, and empowered, and they'll give their best willingly. Encouragement turns the workplace into a place of belonging. Criticism turns it into a battlefield. Encouragement is not about ignoring mistakes. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about shifting the focus from what's broken to what's possible. When someone fails, pointing out the failure does nothing to move them forward. They already know they failed. What matters is whether someone can help them see the progress within the failure. Encouragement doesn't deny reality, it reframes it. It says, yes, this didn't work out, but look how much you've learned and look how much closer you are now than when you started. That shift in perspective changes the way people see themselves. Instead of being defined by their shortcomings, they are defined by their potential. Science backs this up. Neuroscience tells us that when we receive positive reinforcement, our brain releases dopamine, the chemical associated with pleasure and motivation. It creates a feedback loop. Encouragement doesn't just make us feel good in the moment. It literally wires our brains to repeat the behavior. Criticism, on the other hand, activates our threat response. It puts us in survival mode. Our fight or flight instinct takes over and creativity shuts down. That's why in environments of constant criticism, people don't take risks. They don't innovate, they don't push boundaries, they just try to survive. Encouragement, however, creates safety, and in safety we thrive. Think about the greatest teachers you've had in your life. The ones who left an impact on you. Were they the ones who tore apart every mistake? Or were they the ones who believed in you, who reminded you of your potential, who pushed you with encouragement rather than pulled you down with negativity? Most of us can remember a single phrase, a single compliment, a single moment of recognition that changed how we saw ourselves. That is the power of encouragement. It shapes identity. Now let's bring this into leadership. Leaders who rely on criticism may achieve results, but they rarely inspire loyalty. Their people will follow them only as long as they have to. Leaders who rely on encouragement, however, build trust, and trust is the foundation of lasting influence. When people feel seen, when they feel supported, when they feel like their contribution matters, they don't just show up to work, they show up with their heart. They bring their creativity, their passion, their dedication. Encouragement transforms followers into believers. The same applies in personal relationships. Think about friendships, marriages, partnerships. Constant criticism erodes connection. Encouragement strengthens it. When we encourage someone we love, we're saying, I see the best in you. I believe in what you can become. That simple act creates a bond that criticism can never replace. In fact, many relationships don't fail because of a lack of love. They fail because of a lack of encouragement. People stop feeling seen. They stop feeling valued. The beauty of encouragement is that it multiplies. When you encourage someone, they often turn around and encourage others. It creates a ripple effect. A single word of kindness in the right moment can echo for years. Think about a coach who tells a young athlete, "You have what it takes." That sentence could be the reason that athlete never gave up. Think about a mentor who tells a struggling student, "I see something in you." That phrase could be the reason the student kept trying. Encouragement doesn't just change moments, it changes lives. And yet, despite all this, many of us still hesitate to encourage others. We think, what if I come across as soft? What if they get complacent? But encouragement doesn't breed complacency, it breeds confidence. And confident people push themselves harder, they aim higher, they step into challenges with resilience, because they carry the memory of someone who believed in them. Criticism might sharpen edges, but encouragement sharpens character. Encouragement is not about being nice. It's about being intentional. It's about choosing to see the progress rather than just the problems. It's about understanding that people don't grow when they are afraid. They grow when they are supported. Every time we encourage, we're not just lifting someone else, we're shaping a culture. We're shaping how people see themselves, how they see their work, and how they see their future.
Recognition is one of those things we often underestimate. We think it's just a small thank you here and there, maybe a pat on the back or a polite acknowledgement at the end of a project. But recognition is far more powerful than that. It's not just a social courtesy, it's a catalyst. One genuine moment of recognition has the potential to change not just an individual's mindset, but the energy of an entire group. Like dropping a stone in water, the ripples travel outward, reaching places we cannot see, influencing people we may never even meet.
The fascinating thing about recognition is how disproportionate its impact can be compared to the effort it takes. A few words, spoken with sincerity, can stay with someone for years. The mentor's acknowledgement can become the foundation of someone's self-belief. A leader's appreciation can ignite a culture of collaboration and pride. Yet so often recognition is withheld. Some leaders think it weakens authority. Some colleagues assume it's unnecessary. And some individuals simply forget that the smallest gestures can carry the deepest meaning. What they miss is that recognition is not about inflating egos. It's about affirming value.
Imagine a workplace where recognition is rare. People show up, do their tasks, go home and repeat. The focus is on deadlines, targets, and results. If someone performs exceptionally, it's taken for granted. If they make a mistake, it's magnified. Over time, what happens? People start to disengage. They stop giving their best because nobody notices anyway. They begin to view their work not as a source of pride, but as a transaction. I do this. I get paid. Nothing more. The absence of recognition breeds indifference.
Now imagine the opposite. A workplace where recognition is woven into the culture, where effort is noticed, where progress is acknowledged, where contributions, no matter how small, are appreciated. In this environment, people don't just work for a paycheck, they work for a purpose. They feel that what they do matters, that they are part of something larger. Recognition creates belonging, and belonging inspires loyalty. That one moment when a leader says, "I see how much effort you put into this," can give someone the energy to keep pushing long after the applause has faded. That's the ripple effect. It doesn't stop at work.
Think about recognition in families. A child who hears, "I'm proud of you," carries those words into every challenge they face. That recognition shapes their self-esteem, their courage, and their belief in their own abilities. Conversely, the absence of recognition when effort is overlooked or achievements are ignored can leave scars. People begin to wonder if they matter at all. Recognition is not a luxury, it's oxygen. It tells people you exist, and what you do makes a difference. Without it, we suffocate.
Recognition is also contagious. When one person feels valued, they are more likely to value others. It spreads like a chain reaction. A team member who is recognized for their hard work will often turn around and highlight the effort of their peers. A student who is encouraged will encourage others. Recognition creates a cycle of positivity that multiplies beyond the original moment. This is the ripple effect. It moves outward, touching people we may never directly influence, but who benefit because someone else was lifted up.
Consider this. We live in a world where people are more connected than ever through technology, yet more disconnected emotionally than ever before. Loneliness is on the rise, stress is at record levels, and people are searching for meaning in what they do. Recognition addresses that need at the deepest level. It tells someone, you are seen, you are valued, you are important. That single message has the power to cut through the noise and anchor someone in a sense of worth. And here's the beautiful paradox: recognition costs us nothing, but its value is priceless. It doesn't take money to acknowledge someone's contribution. It doesn't take grand gestures or formal ceremonies. It just takes awareness. It takes the ability to stop, notice, and articulate what we see in others. The ripple begins the moment we speak the words. The moment we pause to say, that mattered, you made a difference.
Recognition also shifts culture in subtle but profound ways. In organizations where recognition is common, people are less afraid of failure. Why? Because they know their effort will be acknowledged even if the outcome isn't perfect. They know they are not just judged by results, but by the dedication and resilience they bring to the table. That shift unlocks innovation. People experiment, take risks, and stretch their abilities because they feel supported. When recognition is absent, fear takes over. People play it safe. They hide their ideas. They avoid risk because failure will only bring criticism. Recognition turns fear into courage.
Think about history. Many of the greatest achievements were sparked not just by individual talent, but by someone believing in that talent and recognizing it. Behind every great artist, leader, or innovator, there's often a teacher, mentor, or friend who once said, I see something in you. Recognition doesn't just encourage people to keep going, it gives them permission to dream bigger. It allows them to imagine possibilities they may never have dared to consider alone. That is why its effect is so expansive. Even in small, everyday interactions, recognition can be transformative. The waiter who remembers your order and is thanked genuinely for their effort feels motivated to keep serving with care. The colleague who spends late nights solving a problem and is recognized for their persistence feels valued in a way that fuels future contributions. Recognition doesn't have to come from the top down. It can move laterally across peers, friends, and communities. Its power lies not in hierarchy, but in humanity. When we choose recognition, we're not just influencing one moment, we're shaping a chain of moments that extend beyond our view. The ripple may travel to someone's family, to their community, even to future generations. A teacher's words of recognition can inspire a student to pursue a career that later impacts thousands. A leader's acknowledgement can inspire an employee to one day lead others with the same mindset. Recognition is never contained to the person who receives it. It always expands outward.
And maybe that's the most important thing to remember. Every word of recognition we give has the potential to outlive us. Long after we've forgotten the moment, someone else may still carry it. They may repeat it to themselves when doubt creeps in. They may use it as fuel in their hardest battles. They may pass it on to someone else who needs it just as much. Recognition is not just about celebrating the present, it's about investing in the future.
Praise is powerful, but only when it is genuine and consistent. The truth is, most people don't need grand gestures or over-the-top celebrations. What they need is steady recognition, a rhythm of acknowledgement that reminds them their efforts matter not just once in a while, but all the time. Occasional praise, especially when given sporadically or only at milestones, can feel hollow. It can even come across as manipulation, as if appreciation is a tool used only when results benefit the giver. But consistent recognition creates trust. It creates a culture where people feel valued, not for the occasional big win, but for the ongoing commitment they bring day after day. Think about a garden. If you water a plant once every few weeks, no matter how much water you pour, the plant won't thrive. It might survive for a time, but it will eventually wither. But if you water it consistently, little by little, the roots strengthen, the leaves grow, and the plant flourishes. That's what consistent praise does. It nourishes people steadily, not in bursts of intensity, but in quiet, reliable doses. Consistency is what makes the difference between temporary motivation and lasting growth. The problem with occasional praise is that it often feels transactional. Imagine an employee who only hears, "Great job," when they've closed a big deal or hit a major target. While those words might feel good in the moment, the absence of recognition on ordinary days creates a gap. It sends an unintended message that their daily efforts, the late nights, the problem solving, the small but meaningful contributions don't matter as much. Over time, they start to believe their value is conditional, tied only to outcomes that are visible and measurable. But people aren't motivated solely by outcomes, they're motivated by the journey. Consistent praise acknowledges the process, not just the product.
Consistency also builds credibility. When recognition is only given occasionally, people start questioning its authenticity. They wonder, are they really appreciating me, or are they just saying this because they need something from me right now? But when recognition is steady, it feels real. It feels like part of the culture rather than an exception to it, and that credibility is what keeps people engaged. They know they won't just be celebrated when they cross the finish line, but that their effort throughout the race is seen and valued. Consider athletes. The best coaches don't wait until the championship game to recognize their players. They notice progress in practice, effort in drills, and dedication in preparation. They give consistent feedback, encouragement, and acknowledgement that helps athletes grow over time. Without that steady reinforcement, the only recognition would come at the end. And by then it might be too late. The same is true in life. Waiting for the big moments means missing countless opportunities to fuel growth along the way.
Consistency also prevents the burnout that comes from being unnoticed. Many people leave jobs not because of pay or workload, but because they feel invisible. They give everything they have, but their efforts seem to disappear into the background. Occasional praise, offered at random, can't fill that void. But when recognition is consistent, even small acknowledgments can remind people that what they do matters. That simple act of being seen can reignite motivation and prevent disengagement.
There's another layer to this psychology. Human beings thrive on patterns. We build habits, rituals, and routines. Our brains are wired to find comfort in consistency. When recognition becomes part of the rhythm of interaction, it reinforces positive behavior more effectively than random bursts ever could. Sporadic praise is like static. It's hard to predict, hard to rely on, and easy to dismiss. But steady recognition is like a drumbeat. It creates momentum. It establishes expectations. It builds an environment where positivity is the norm, not the exception.
Think about relationships. Imagine a partner who only expresses appreciation on birthdays or anniversaries. While those moments may be special, the silence in between creates doubt. Now imagine a partner who consistently says, "I appreciate you," or acknowledges the small things, making dinner, listening during a hard day, or simply being present. That steady recognition builds intimacy and trust. It creates a foundation where both people feel secure and valued. Consistency doesn't just strengthen individuals, it strengthens bonds.
One of the most overlooked aspects of consistent praise is that it doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as a smile, a thank you, or a quick acknowledgement in passing. These small moments, repeated often, have a cumulative effect. Over time, they build a reservoir of positive emotion that people can draw from when challenges arise. When recognition is absent, challenges feel heavier. But when recognition is consistent, challenges feel like opportunities because people know their effort will not go unnoticed. In organizations, consistency of recognition also sets the tone for culture. A culture where praise is rare becomes one where people compete for attention, often tearing each other down just to be noticed. But a culture where recognition is steady creates collaboration. People don't feel the need to fight for validation because they know it is part of the environment. They don't withhold acknowledgement from others out of fear of losing their own spotlight because they know there is enough recognition to go around. Consistency eliminates scarcity.
There's also a danger in occasional praise that people don't often talk about. When praise comes rarely, it can make individuals dependent on it. They wait for those rare words like drops of water in a desert, and their sense of worth becomes tied to external validation. Consistent recognition, however, normalizes appreciation. It allows people to internalize the value of their contributions, building intrinsic motivation rather than dependency. They don't need to chase praise because they already live in an environment that affirms them. The most inspiring leaders, teachers, and mentors understand this. They don't save their words for special occasions. They make recognition part of their daily practice, not because people can't function without it, but because they understand that people flourish with it. Consistency in recognition tells people your value doesn't depend on extraordinary circumstances. It's who you are and what you bring every single day. That steady message is far more powerful than any occasional outburst of applause.
Consistency also teaches us something about humility. When we consistently recognize others, we shift the focus away from ourselves. We acknowledge that success is not a solo act, that every achievement is the result of effort, collaboration, and shared dedication. Recognition then becomes less about boosting someone's mood and more about honoring their humanity. It says, I see you, not just sometimes, not just when it's convenient, but always. And when people feel seen consistently, they respond with loyalty, passion, and commitment that no occasional praise could ever inspire. Every action we take is a vote for the kind of person we want to become. But here's the truth. Most of us don't realize how deeply the small reinforcements around us influence those actions. Reinforcement is like a silent architect. It shapes our behaviors, which over time turn into habits. And those habits, repeated again and again, eventually form our identity. What we consistently do is who we become. Think about someone learning to play an instrument. At the beginning, they stumble, make mistakes, hit the wrong notes. If every mistake is met with criticism or frustration, the student may eventually give up, convinced they are not musical. But if those early efforts are met with encouragement, you're improving. That sounded better. I can see your progress. They begin to internalize the belief that they are capable of becoming a musician. That belief drives them to practice more, and the practice becomes a habit. With enough repetition, the habit shapes their identity. They no longer see themselves as someone trying to play an instrument. They see themselves as a musician. Reinforcement at the start is what sets the trajectory. Habits are not formed in isolation. They are born from repeated behaviors, and those behaviors are most often sustained by the reinforcement we receive. When a child is praised for being curious, they learn to ask more questions. When they are rewarded for showing kindness, they begin to do kindness until it becomes natural. Over time, curiosity becomes part of who they are. Kindness becomes part of who they are. Reinforcement is the soil in which habits grow, and the habits become the roots of identity.
What's fascinating is how subtle reinforcement can be. It doesn't always come in the form of overt praise or rewards. Sometimes it's just the way someone looks at us when we speak, the way they respond to our effort, the way they acknowledge our presence. If those cues are positive, we feel encouraged to repeat the behavior. If those cues are negative or absent, we retreat. This is why environments matter so much. A workplace that consistently reinforces creativity builds employees who see themselves as innovators. A family that reinforces resilience builds children who see themselves as problem solvers. Identity is not formed in a vacuum. It is carved out by the reinforcements of daily life.
But here's the catch. Reinforcement works both ways. Just as positive reinforcement builds empowering habits, negative reinforcement, or the absence of reinforcement, can build limiting ones. If someone is constantly criticized for speaking up, they may stop sharing ideas altogether. If their effort is ignored repeatedly, they may stop trying. Slowly, without realizing it, they begin to form habits of silence, habits of withdrawal, habits of self-doubt. Those habits harden into identity. They stop believing they are capable, and they begin to accept an identity that was shaped not by their true potential, but by the reinforcement they received.
Consider the difference between two students in a classroom. One is encouraged whenever they raise their hand, even if their answer is wrong. The teacher says, "That's an interesting thought, let's explore it." The other student is dismissed when they're wrong, perhaps even ridiculed. Over time, the first student develops the habit of participation. They see themselves as someone whose thoughts matter. That habit becomes confidence, and confidence becomes identity. The second student develops the habit of silence. They see themselves as someone whose voice doesn't matter. That habit becomes insecurity, and insecurity becomes identity. Same classroom, same age, same potential, but entirely different outcomes because of reinforcement. Reinforcement also explains why habits are so powerful. Our brains are wired to repeat behaviors that are rewarded. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation, is released when we experience positive reinforcement. It creates a loop: behavior, reinforcement, repetition. Over time, the loop runs so smoothly that we don't even think about it. That's what a habit is: automatic repetition. And when enough habits are built, they merge into identity. Someone who exercises regularly doesn't just see themselves as someone who works out. They see themselves as an athlete, as a healthy person. Someone who writes consistently doesn't just see themselves as someone who writes. They begin to identify as a writer. The shift from behavior to identity is gradual, but it starts with reinforcement.
This is why leaders, parents, teachers, and mentors carry such responsibility. Every word of reinforcement they give, or fail to give, can influence the habits people build. A leader who consistently acknowledges problem solving creates a culture of problem solvers. A teacher who consistently rewards curiosity creates a generation of learners. A parent who reinforces empathy builds children who grow into compassionate adults. Habits don't appear by accident. They are cultivated, and reinforcement is the gardener.
But it's not just about external reinforcement. Over time, the reinforcement we receive from others shapes the way we reinforce ourselves. Self-talk is in many ways the internalization of the voices we've heard the most. Someone who has been consistently encouraged will often encourage themselves, reinforcing their own positive behaviors. Someone who has been criticized relentlessly may carry that voice inside, reinforcing their doubts every time they attempt something new. The external becomes internal, and the internal becomes identity.
Habits are powerful not only because they shape what we do, but because they change how we see ourselves. Every time we follow through on a behavior, we cast a vote for our identity. If we're reinforced for honesty, we begin to see ourselves as honest. If we're reinforced for persistence, we begin to see ourselves as resilient. Identity is the accumulation of reinforced habits. And once identity is formed, it drives future behavior, creating a self-perpetuating cycle. Think about someone training for a marathon. At first, the act of running is just a behavior. They run a mile, and perhaps a friend cheers them on. That recognition makes them feel good, so they run again the next day. Each time they're reinforced, the behavior becomes a little more automatic. Soon, running turns into a habit. But after enough repetition, something deeper happens. They no longer say, "I'm someone who runs." They say, "I'm a runner." And that identity now fuels them to run, even on days when they don't feel like it. Reinforcement has turned behavior into identity.
This cycle explains why positive reinforcement is so much more powerful than punishment. Punishment might stop a behavior temporarily, but it doesn't build a new habit, and it certainly doesn't create a new identity. Positive reinforcement, on the other hand, not only sustains the behavior, but reshapes how people see themselves. It plants seeds that grow into lifelong habits, and those habits define the person.
When we look back at our lives, much of who we are can be traced to the reinforcements we received and the habits we formed. Because of them, the kindness we show, the confidence we carry, the resilience we embody, all of it can be linked to moments when someone reinforced a behavior and we repeated it until it became us. Our identity is a mirror of our habits, and our habits are the reflection of reinforcement. Leadership is often misunderstood as the ability to direct, to command, to enforce rules, and to point out where others fall short. Many leaders still carry the belief that authority comes from being the loudest voice in the room or the sharpest critic of mistakes. But true leadership is not about asserting dominance. It is about creating an environment where others can thrive. Leadership at its core is influence, and the most enduring form of influence is not born out of fear or control, but out of positivity. When we think of leaders who left a lasting mark, it wasn't because they were perfect or because they had all the answers. It was because they had the ability to make people believe in themselves, to see potential that individuals often couldn't see in their own reflection. Positivity in leadership is not about ignoring problems or sugarcoating reality. It's about framing challenges in a way that inspires action instead of paralyzing fear. A leader who leads through positivity says, yes, this obstacle is real, but so is our capacity to overcome it. That shift in narrative doesn't deny the difficulty, it amplifies the belief in possibility. People rarely remember the exact details of instructions given to them, but they always remember how a leader made them feel. A leader who constantly criticizes might achieve compliance, but the memory that lingers is one of inadequacy. A leader who consistently encourages creates a memory of empowerment. Those memories become the emotional foundation upon which people build their work, their creativity, and their loyalty. Positivity is not about empty compliments. It is about instilling confidence, reminding people that their contribution matters, and fostering resilience when setbacks inevitably occur. Consider the workplace again. Picture two teams. One is led by a manager who points out errors, highlights flaws, and constantly reminds the group of what they are not doing well. The other is led by someone who acknowledges progress, celebrates effort, and reframes mistakes as opportunities to learn. The first team might get results in the short term, but they will always operate under stress. They'll do just enough to avoid criticism, but rarely more. The second team, however, will push beyond their comfort zones. They will innovate, take risks, and strive for excellence. Not because they fear punishment, but because they feel supported. Leadership through positivity cultivates ownership. People stop working for the leader and start working for the vision.
Positivity in leadership also creates resilience. When people are led by fear, one failure can crush them. But when people are led by encouragement, failure becomes part of the process. They bounce back faster because they carry the reinforcement of someone who believes in them. They don't see mistakes as the end of the road, but as stepping stones along the journey. This kind of resilience is what separates average teams from exceptional ones. Exceptional teams are not those who never fail. They are the ones who know that when they do, their leader will still see their worth.
Leadership through positivity is not passive. It doesn't mean turning a blind eye to what's wrong. It means confronting challenges with an attitude that uplifts rather than diminishes. When a leader approaches a setback with positivity, it cascades down. People mirror what they see. If the leader reacts with frustration and blame, the team learns to hide mistakes and shift responsibility. But if the leader reacts with calmness, optimism, and encouragement, the team learns to face problems head-on, to collaborate, and to improve. Leaders set the emotional tone, and positivity creates a climate where growth becomes possible. There's also a ripple effect that goes far beyond the immediate team. A leader's positivity doesn't stop at the walls of the workplace. It follows people home. It shapes the way they interact with their families, the way they treat their friends, the way they approach their own dreams. A single phrase of encouragement from a leader can echo in someone's mind for years, influencing decisions and building courage long after the leader is gone. That's the invisible legacy of positive leadership. It creates waves that outlast the moment.
What makes leadership through positivity so powerful is its ability to shape identity. When a leader consistently reinforces someone's strengths, that person begins to internalize those strengths. They stop seeing themselves only through the lens of what they lack and begin to see themselves as capable, resourceful, and valuable. Over time, that reinforced belief reshapes their identity. They no longer need constant encouragement from outside because they've begun to encourage themselves inside. Positivity doesn't just inspire action, it transforms self-perception.
Think about history. Some of the greatest movements were not led by people who criticized relentlessly, but by those who inspired with hope. They rallied others not by pointing out everything that was broken, but by painting a vision of what was possible. That vision gave people strength. It created unity. It gave them a reason to keep going when circumstances were against them. Positive leadership doesn't deny the dark. It lights a candle in the dark and shows others that even a small flame is enough to guide the way.
In personal relationships, leadership through positivity is just as essential. Families, friendships, partnerships, they all thrive when one person takes the role of lifting others up. A parent who constantly criticizes a child might shape behavior in the short term, but a parent who consistently encourages shapes character for a lifetime. A friend who only points out flaws may think they are being honest, but a friend who encourages growth while offering support actually creates change. Leadership in any context is about influence, and influence is strongest when it comes from a place of positivity.
The most overlooked truth about leadership is that it is not about the leader at all. It's about the people they lead. A leader's legacy is measured not by their own achievements, but by the achievements of those they inspired. Positivity is the bridge between potential and performance. It turns doubt into determination, hesitation into action, and ordinary people into extraordinary contributors. Leadership through positivity doesn't just manage people, it elevates them. And the irony is, positivity in leadership doesn't require more resources, more time, or more skill than negativity. It simply requires intention. It requires choosing to see effort instead of only errors, to highlight strengths instead of only weaknesses, to build trust instead of fear. It requires understanding that leadership is not about being the smartest person in the room, but about making others believe they are capable of greatness. When positivity becomes the foundation, leadership stops being about control and starts being about transformation. At the heart of everything we've explored, whether it's the power of encouragement over criticism, the ripple effect of recognition, the importance of consistency, the role of reinforcement in shaping identity, or the essence of leadership through positivity, there is one unshakable truth: people rise when they feel seen, valued, and believed in. Positive reinforcement is not just a technique, it is a philosophy of life. It is the choice to build rather than break, to strengthen rather than weaken, to plant seeds of belief rather than doubts of inadequacy. When we choose encouragement, we are not just influencing behavior, we are shaping identities, transforming cultures, and creating legacies that outlive us.
The real measure of our impact is not in the tasks completed or the goals achieved, but in how people feel after interacting with us. Do they walk away smaller, doubting themselves, or do they walk away taller, more confident, ready to take on the world? That is the test of positive reinforcement.
We all carry this responsibility. In every word, every glance, every acknowledgement, we have the power to reinforce what is good, what is strong, and what is possible in others. The leaders, the parents, the teachers, the friends who embrace positivity are the ones who unlock human potential in its truest form.
And the beauty of it all is that it doesn't take much. A word of encouragement, a moment of recognition, a steady consistency of appreciation, a belief that someone is capable of more. These small acts ripple outward in ways we may never fully see, but they matter. They always matter.
So as we step forward, the question is not whether positive reinforcement works. It always does. The question is whether we are willing to practice it daily, intentionally, and authentically. Because when we do, we don't just change others, we change ourselves. We create environments where everyone can thrive. And in the end, that is what leadership, influence, and humanity